Hi everyone, the goal by the end of this video is that you should be able to build beautiful landing pages like this and utilize them with Lovable and GPT-5. So without any further ado, let's get started. So to get started, we'll start in ChatGPT. In this, I have this massive prompt which is going to help us actually create a beautiful prompt for Lovable, right? Again, there are multiple options available here, but to speed up our process and then guide you through the prompt, I'm just going to say, give me a preset prompt for an AI automation agency which which excels in helping businesses automate back office process, right? Again, with this you can just utilize that, and now it will create me a simple preset prompt with all the details that I need to actually again utilize and give this back into Lovable. Again, quickly you can see very simply there are multiple options that are available. I'm just going to say create an expert preset automatically, and that's it. And with that it will automatically create everything that I need to give to Lovable so that it can process a beautiful prompt. So it has all the design format, you can see here the design and branding, the color palette, the sections and the content structure, the problem and solution. It has even the copy. It has everything that I need to give to Lovable to create a beautiful input. So with this prompt I can just click on copy and then simply go ahead into Lovable, and we're going to come to Lovable here, right? And this was something that I was already working on. We'll come to Lovable here and then again say create a project based on this, and then simply come here and paste this. I have selected GPT-5 because I want to test how does it actually create something, and we're just going to press enter, and now it will go ahead and start creating the first landing page. Now at the same time, what you can do is, another option that I've given in this prompt is actually start creating a couple of videos at the back, right? Because the point is I want my hero section to have a video, and which is super important, which you can do while Lovable is going to do this. It is going to take some time. Roughly it takes around 5 to 7 minutes for Lovable to generate the first preview because of the detail that it exists. Now given that we have set that off on Lovable, let me just walk you through this. So this is a massive prompt which will be available in the description. Now I spent around 3 hours perfecting this prompt to a most level, which it works around 95% of times on the exact reasons, but again the 5% part is how just AI is. So again, this prompt works as an AI prompt engineer and a UX consultant, right? Again, and has a very clear mission to help people generate Lovable prompts for creating a very beautiful design with AI. Then it has multiple inputs on how to interact. Then it has also other options available there. But again, with that, you can find the whole prompt in detail available here. The goal is that it creates a prompt like this, which I can directly input into Lovable to create actually a beautiful design. It also defines the color palette, the information, the typography, the visuals, and everything else, so that it has a very clear understanding of what it is trying to build. With that, what I can also do is give me an image prompt for hero section, right? So because now it already knows what we are creating, it will create a particular prompt. I selected Midjourney as my tool. You can obviously ask it to create something else, right? Again, you can see hero section prompt for Midjourney, DALL-E, or something else. I'm just going to copy this and actually bring you to Midjourney, right? And in Midjourney, we'll just be able to input this prompt, and I can obviously go ahead and change a couple of things here if I want to. But very simply, again, we'll just test this out on how does this actually look. This still does not look like a Midjourney prompt. I can say here, focus on Midjourney, right? And create that final prompt. And then again, it will give me a more Midjourney optimized prompt if I want, right? Again, with specific variations and everything else. But again, this is something that is there. I was wanting again, I can ask it to something change also, right? Again, I want, give me an abstract hero image prompt for the website. Because the point is, again, I don't want to input this again, and you can obviously go ahead and search for some abstract backgrounds, right? So we can think about something like this, again, if I want to, or some other alternatives, but let's see what we come up with here. Okay, so corporate AI automation agency, bright green accents, and for clean. Okay, so let's try this. This looks good as a prompt. We can input all of this here. I don't want this, right? For a corporate, I don't want again, corporate AI automation agency. I just want to say website hero section for the website hero section, and then I can switch this from version 6 to actually version 7 because I want to use the latest model. So now this will technically create a bit more wave style pattern and something like that, which we can actually utilize. Because again, these kind of images look super stock and we don't like them. They don't look good. And this is one thing, like, again, where ChatGPT 5 does not really perform that well, like, again, as much as I would like to. On thinking mode, it does give a bit better answer, but nothing too crazy, right? Again, as you can see right now, like, Lovable is going through this whole process. It's going to, like, do a lot of tool calls. Again, it has GPT-5 here also. I could have used here, but again, keeping the prompt separate is a bit, like, interesting, and also, like, helps you, like, just differentiate between better. We can see the image coming up here better, right? Again, and one thing that I've realized is that, utilizing Midjourney for images is just highly better. And if you can, like, just do that, you can 110% also use the same prompt quite literally here, right? You can ask it to, like, create an image here. But the point is, like, again, very simply, the quality is not that great again, and we can see, like, what comes out. But the point is, it does not always come out in that, like, the format that we want. Like, you can obviously choose a couple of styles, there are a couple of options and everything else, but it would just be better to do it in Midjourney, and that's why I choose it. So it's going to take a couple of seconds to get this right, but we'll also get an image here in, hopefully, in Midjourney, in ChatGPT. I don't know where it has either. But with this, what you can do is drag this image, right? Again, so these two images, like, can be a super cool starting frame. Now we need a video, so you drop this and then very simply, like, select this to animate, right? Again, a wavy motion of growth, right? Again, so I'm just going to say this, select hi. I have two of my animations where I want to start and end at, and then present this, and now it will merge both of these things and bring in a single kind of, like, variation of the prompt. Now here also you are seeing another image being created, so you can choose a couple of options. I like Midjourney a lot. Again, like, even the last response that I showed you was created here with Midjourney. So, like, again, it's pretty cool and does perform effectively well. I was trying to create prompt icons and everything else, but this is the kind of videos you can get from Midjourney for your hero sections, which look extremely cool. And I'll show you in a second. As you can see, Lovable is on track. It roughly takes a couple of seconds to do this, right? Again, at the same time, we have not, like, again, we'll probably, Lovable gets you mostly around 60 to 70% there, but for the rest, 20% to 30%, you still need to do a bit of effort that we'll do. But again, till then, I'm just going to fast forward this so you don't have to see the whole boring part. I'm going to take 30 seconds of your time. We're launching something that can help people grow in their path to learning more about AI and utilizing it on a daily basis. Number one, every time I've created content, I've got the same three questions. I don't know how to actually implement this in my career. I don't know how to actually implement these systems in my business. I don't know how to sell AI solutions even after I build them. And for all of these three questions, we are creating a single place where you can get all of them answered. Not only that, you will also get an access to a ton of resources and different courses which you can really go deep dive into AI, where you can learn everything from scratch and really ask questions when you need to. At the same time, you will get a support from not only me, but also a ton of other creators that we are partnering up with and bringing them in a single place, so that this becomes the only community that you need to be part of. If you are interested, go down to the link in the description. I'm looking forward to see you in the community, and please continue with the video now. Now, at the first outcome, you can see, first of all, the Midjourney image is created, and this will look super cool, and I'll show it to you, like, how much it makes a difference in, like, your hero section, right? So I'm going to copy the video URL here. That's one of the best things with Midjourney. You can copy that, and then we are going to come back here, right? Again, and this is the kind of output you get, right? Again, so now obviously, does it look perfect? No, but the point is, like, this has a very robust, like, again, formal, like, website style format, like, something that converts, right? You want something that converts, right? So it's very clean, looks very clean, like, has small micro interactions available, even the buttons and even the background that, like, this small insert by utilizing Lovable with GPT-5 looks pretty cool. As you can see, like, again, like, very good micro interactions created really beautifully. Like, again, looks like a very professional website. Now, again, if you want to change something, so, like, I want to, like, for example, like, trusted and compliant and all of these things, we can change that. But let's get started. I like the colors of the green more, right? Again, so you can obviously, like, ask it to, like, add that a bit more. But let's start with step number one, right? So, and, like, that's how you get to the point, like, you select what you want and you go till there, right? Again, so first, I'm just going to say, like, update. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list of things that I want to change and then simply add. Okay, as you can see, I've input all of this. Now, before I move on to anything, I first want to, like, chat, and I want to say, like, create an implementation plan, right? So the point is, always when you're using Lovable and, like, for these quick fixes, it probably, like, takes better to, like, get started like this and, like, move on to that. But it's always better to get started with the chat option and then move on to like, fixing it like, one by one. But the point is, it will roughly take another 5 to 10 minutes to like, fix this quickly, so that we have like a clear picture on what we are building here. But again, this looks like, this looks pretty cool, nothing crazy. But also I like, I'll show you, I've got like, pretty cool responses after working with like, designs for like another 10 to 20 minutes, where you have options. This is one of the websites that we are creating for our AI automation program, right? Again, so again, it looks pretty cool, right? Again, you have like, for example, we get like, very cool like responses after this, like, you get like, a movable option, and like, you get like, you can also get like, we'll get to a hero section like this very quickly, and you can obviously like, change and like, move across as you want. The best part with that prompt is that, you can go as deep as you want. You can also like, we can obviously use these logos also to make it stand out. But the idea is that, this prompt can help you. Like the main prompt that I have here helps me like, just get started very quickly. Obviously, you can start with a simpler prompt also. I've tried that. It just does not work with Lovable. Lovable requires the first input to be pretty detailed, and that always helps. Like again, here with GPT-5 also, like because of creating a plan, it will be, I believe, will be able to create like, a much better quality section. So I'm going to move out from the chat part, implement the plan right now. As you can see, like, I would suggest you to like, obviously go ahead and like, go much more into detail and understand what it's doing here. But again, right now, given from an example perspective, we can really just use it. One of the good touches with Lovable now is that, it generates its own images. So here it has created a random image with different logos, which I'm pretty sure are not real companies, and just created that. With that, it will now start implementing this, and I believe in a couple of seconds, it should have a pretty clear understanding of like, in a couple of seconds, we should have a pretty like, robust landing page ready, which we can utilize. I don't know how I want this. I actually like this, like, from bottlenecks to breakthroughs, because this really gives like, some spacing issues there. We can fix that. But the point is like, this really like, puts the point across, like, that this is because when you're selling to businesses, you always don't need like, people create these amazingly beautiful landing pages, right? Again, which are great only for like, not conversion, right? Again, you need an extremely good converting page. You need a page that explains the proposition, like, again, and people forget that beautiful designs sadly always don't convert, right? Again, and that's the call out here, right? Always don't convert. For example, I think like, let me just talk to you about that until like, this changes. I'm able to bring you to Notion, right? Again, so Notion looks like this, right? Again, like, the AI workspace that works for you, like, again, amazing design, one of my favorite design companies, right? But if you look at it, right, again, now, if I bring you to Notion till that is happening, very simply, if you look at this, one of the favorite design languages that exist here, people always keep referring to Notion a lot. Now, if you look at this, this is such a simple landing page, right? Get Notion for free, request a demo, and you have a simple, like, toggle at the top. And then you have obviously, like, Notion product information itself, right? Again, with all of these. And that's the whole idea. That's the whole idea. Like, again, the whole idea for Notion is like, this is what we have. We have all our demos, we have input. So if you're doing a product demo, this works. You have like a bento grid here at the end and everything else. But the idea is like, it's simple. Like, it's simple and it is converting. Showcase what you're doing, right? Again, I have like, I have burnt my hands on like, trying to build the perfect animated, beautiful, like, with all the 150 micro interactions. And then the landing page just does not convert, because it's like, again, the people that you are reaching out to are not Twitter audience. They are people who own businesses, who own like, who are trying to grow their careers, who are trying to do something. So they want like, someone who gets them, and someone who focuses on the work more. So, like, again, focusing on the product more and everything else. So again, there is a difference of opinion, but again, these kind of landing pages work. And like, again, obviously, like, you can make it a bit more design worthy, and you can like, do a couple of things. Like bento grid is something that I would love to see how that gets implemented. But once that is done, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good to get started with, and then you can obviously like, change and everything else. And let's see, like, this is a cool feature that they've started, like, error occurs and they try to fix automatically rather than making you click a button now. So I'll give it a couple of seconds and fast forward through this, so you actually see what I'm talking about at the end. So it got fixed, like, with the bento grid and everything else, right? Again, it fixed the bento grid. Again, with the overlay, it's like still a bit high, but again, I'm going to ask it to like, change that. And then this is one input, like, again, very simply, I technically want this switch from like, vertical cards to like, kind of like, from horizontal cards to vertical cards, but then it does not meet the stylify. But then again, that's a choice that you can take, right? Again, and then you have all these options. It deleted the rest, and you have the orbit flow AI here. But again, you have all the options available very clearly, like again, and I think like this is a very good start to creating the final version. So we are going to make 2 quick changes and then we'll be pretty much done. Make the overlay last bit dark so I can see the video in the hero section, and then I need to see how I can describe this properly, right? Again, so right, so the overlay section is done, like now it looks extremely better. Like again, like just a video can add a lot to your hero page, because again obviously like it's like much something that AI still like is created, but again looks like much more cooler, and like you have this. And with this, like you can obviously like add an image here if you want something, and like automate your back office, focus on growth. You can obviously put office on the first term and like focus on growth, but again very simply move along as you want. Again, I like like very simply like with the video, or we can also ask it very simply to center align this. So click on edit, center align CTA and subhead line and the buttons, center align the whole hero section. And with that, I can also at the same time add another option, which I'm trying to do for this, is to describe Lovable on how I want the cards. I want an animation to be here. So convert the how it works section into vertical card section add in time, and only one card is visible, and the rest of cards hide behind it. And they keep going back after 5 seconds. This needs to be animated in a simple format with a beautiful flow. Okay, so it has centered this. Again, like let's refresh this. I always love to see it in the preview, because you see how like a user might see it. Okay, available here. Do we need to refresh again? Yep, looks much better. You have this automation. We can obviously like try to, well, this I kind of like it, so I don't want to change this, but again maybe just like fix the size of like the option here, and then let's see how this works. So I'm just going to select this and come back here to this whole section and let it chat and like create a plan, and then let's see what it comes out with, because that's pretty much it. After that, we are technically done. And if you want to like again, if you're still watching the video, please like, share and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot, and I am really like maximizing the amount of input that goes into every one of this. The prompt that I'm going to share with you, which allows you to like create a single shot prompt that can create great output in Lovable, took like a good amount of time. I probably wasted a ton more amount of time rather than needed, but I wanted to make sure that you guys have something that can be like have everything. Like it has the copy, it has everything, it has every section properly explained, like what you want. And if you go into a collaborative mode, like let me just like go ahead and like just show you this in an alternative chart. If I start a new chart, I paste this prompt that I have had, right? Again, so like start an expert chart, start an express or a guided chart. You will see that it's going to be so much more detailed. Like you will have to like seriously like after one after another answer multiple questions, which will help you create a perfect landing page. We just said you decide for us and give us an output. But now if you like choose this, it will literally start a very guided chart for you. So yeah. Okay, let's see. This is there. Again, I'm going to just like move the chart option, remove the edit option, and say implement the plan. Don't know how it will work, but again you get the idea. With this, it will really help you. Like this prompt is probably like one of the best outcomes that you can get out of this. So you'll get this, you'll get this whole idea. Now it will just keep doing its thing, right? Again, after this, it will start asking you questions and everything else, and like answer in a numbered list. So you can go ahead and answer all of these questions, which will help you. I'm not going to do that just to not make this video a 40-minute thing, but it will take you like 5 to 10 minutes if you know what you're trying to build, and it will really be able to like help you build the right kind of landing page by answering all these questions. That's how you should start. You should give it enough context in AI and then build the landing pages. We are trying to do it fast to just showcase a demo, but you should technically input all of these details to get the right output and then copy and paste that back into Lovable. Let's see how this comes up. I'm just going to fast forward this part so you just see the final output. Very simply, it actually did it. And like GPT-5, I think like is very pretty good like with this complex applications, because I tried this in Sonnet, like something similar, and it took like roughly 30 minutes. This got done in 2 to 3 minutes, and like this looks pretty cool. I've obviously asked it to remove the buttons and everything else and let it completely keep going. But like, just the idea that you can animate and create all of these beautiful animations with like in Lovable is beautiful. You have the bento card, which was horrible in like Sonnet. So I can honestly say GPT-5 has actually come along a long way, like in like designing and everything else in front end, and actually at least a lot more in like ensuring the instructions are followed. Like it really followed like a massive prompt which I had. So that itself is very crazy, right? Again, so again, I have all this information available here. Again, go ahead and check out the links in the description if you want to get out the prompt, and you can also see this website if you want to see it and like remix it for yourself and go ahead from there. If you like the video, please again go ahead and click that subscribe button. Helps me out a lot, really helps me out a lot, and I'm looking to really get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of this year, and I would love your support. Till then, I'll see you in the next one, and have a good day.